They called her cursed. They said a crippled Omega had no right to live. So they whipped her until she could no longer stand, dragged her through the snow, and threw her beyond the pack's border, certain the frozen wilderness would finish what they had started. But they made one terrible mistake. They left her alive. As the broken Omega crawled toward the ancient border with blood staining the snow behind her, something impossible happened. 4 legendary royal wolves stepped out of the darkness. Every warrior expected them to tear her apart. The giant wolves lowered their heads before the dying Omega. The sacred gate that had remained sealed for centuries slowly opened on its own. Across the werewolf kingdom, whispers turned into fear. Who was this forgotten Omega? Why had the royal guardians bowed to a girl everyone else called worthless? And why was the ruthless Alpha King already waiting on the other side? The truth hidden inside one broken Omega would shake every throne, expose every lie, and force the most powerful Alpha alive to choose between his kingdom and the woman destiny had placed at his feet. This is the story of the crippled Omega who crawled to the pack border and walked into history escorted by 4 royal wolves. The wind screamed across the frozen valley like a wounded beast. Snow raced over the empty ground, hiding every footprint almost as soon as it appeared. The sky was dark, heavy with storm clouds, and the moon struggled to shine through them. It was the kind of night that made even strong warriors stay close to their fires. But one young Omega had no fire, no shelter, no one waiting for her. She crawled through the snow with trembling hands, leaving a thin trail of blood behind her. Every movement sent sharp pain through her injured legs, yet she refused to stop. Her name was Elara. Only hours earlier, she had belonged to the Shadow Ridge pack. Now she belonged to no one. Behind her, the pack gates slowly disappeared beneath the falling snow. The voices that had mocked her were gone, but their cruel words still echoed inside her heart. Worthless Omega. You bring nothing but bad luck. You should have died years ago. Elara closed her eyes for a moment, trying to push the voices away. She whispered softly, "Just a little farther." The freezing wind stole her words before anyone could hear them. Long before this terrible night, Elara had dreamed of having a family. She had imagined laughing with friends, running through green forests in her wolf form, and someday finding the mate destiny had chosen for her. Instead, she grew up as the lowest member of the pack. She cleaned houses. She carried water. She cooked meals she was never allowed to eat. When something went wrong, everyone blamed her first. She had learned that silence often hurt less than arguing. Still, no amount of cruelty had changed the kindness inside her heart. Even when she barely had enough bread for herself, she always shared it with hungry pups. Even when her body ached after long days of work, she stayed awake to comfort frightened children during storms. No one thanked her. She never expected them to. Earlier that same afternoon, the entire pack had gathered in the central square. The sacred healing herbs prepared for the Alpha's sick mother had disappeared. The Beta pointed directly at Elara. "Search her room." She looked up in shock. "I didn't take them." Nobody listened. Within minutes, guards dragged her outside. They tore apart her tiny room until one of them held up a cloth bag filled with healing herbs. "There they are." Gasps spread through the crowd. Elara stared at the bag with wide eyes. Someone had placed it there. She knew it. But truth meant nothing once the crowd had chosen its villain. The Alpha stepped forward, his face hard as stone. "You betrayed this pack." "I swear I didn't." "Enough." His voice silenced the square. "You will be punished before everyone." The whip cracked through the cold air. Elara cried out as pain exploded across her back. Again, again, again. She tried to stay standing. She wanted to prove she was stronger than their hatred. But eventually her knees struck the frozen ground. The punishment continued until she could no longer feel her legs. Around her, many wolves watched without speaking. Some looked away. Some smiled. Only one small voice broke the silence. "Stop!" A little wolf pup pushed through the crowd. His clothes were too large for his tiny body, and tears streamed down his dirty face. It was Finn. He threw himself over Elara, wrapping his small arms around her. "Please don't hurt her anymore." A guard grabbed the frightened pup. "Move aside." "No." Finn struggled with all the strength an 8-year-old could gather. "She didn't do it. She always helps everyone." The beta shoved him backward. The child fell into the snow. Elara forced herself to lift her head. "Finn." "I'm here," the boy cried. "I'm sorry." "No." Her voice was barely louder than the wind. "Don't apologize." 2 guards carried Finn away while he reached toward her. His cries slowly disappeared into the storm. That sound hurt Elara far more than the whip ever could. The Alpha looked down at her with cold eyes. "You are no longer one of us." He pointed toward the northern wilderness. "Throw her beyond the border." Without another word, soldiers dragged her across the frozen ground. Sharp rocks cut into her skin. Snow filled the open wounds on her back. Finally they tossed her onto the empty road outside the packlands. One guard laughed. "If she survives until morning, the wolves will finish what we started." The heavy gates closed behind them. Elara lay still for several long moments. She could have surrendered. No one would have blamed her. But then another memory entered her mind. Years ago, an old storyteller had once whispered a strange legend. Far beyond the northern forests stood the ancient border. Some believed it separated ordinary packs from lands protected by the oldest wolf spirits. The storyteller had smiled kindly before saying, "Those who reach the sacred gate with a pure heart are never truly alone." At the time, Elara had thought it was only a bedtime story. No, it was the only hope she had left. Slowly she dug her fingers into the snow. One pull, then another. Every movement burned through her broken body. The wind became stronger. Darkness wrapped itself around the valley. Hours seemed to pass. Sometimes she stopped moving without realizing it. Each time she opened her eyes again, she forced herself forward. "I can do this." Her voice shook. "For Finn." She remembered the little boy smiling whenever she secretly brought him fresh bread. She remembered covering him with her own blanket during winter nights. She remembered promising him that no matter how dark life became, kindness should never disappear. If she gave up now, that promise would die with her. So she crawled. The forest grew silent. Too silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Elara slowly lifted her head. Ahead of her stood a pair of ancient stone pillars covered with glowing silver markings. The sacred border. She had actually reached it. Relief filled her tired heart. But something else moved beyond the falling snow. 4 large shadows. Their glowing golden eyes appeared one after another inside the white mist. Elara's breathing stopped. They were wolves. Not ordinary wolves. Each one was larger than a horse. Their silver-black fur shimmered beneath the moonlight. Power rolled from them like invisible waves. Every story she had ever heard about the royal guardians suddenly returned. No traveler had ever survived meeting them. Too weak to run, Elara lowered her head. "If this is the end." A small smile appeared on her lips. "Thank you for letting me see the border." The 4 enormous wolves slowly stepped closer. The snow trembled beneath their paws. One reached her first. Its glowing eyes studied her quietly. Then something impossible happened. Instead of baring its fangs, the great royal wolf gently lowered its head before the broken omega. The other 3 did exactly the same. And somewhere beyond the ancient gate, unseen eyes were already watching. The snowstorm grew even louder. Cold wind swept across the ancient border, carrying tiny crystals of ice through the silent forest. The world seemed to hold its breath as the 4 enormous royal wolves surrounded the broken omega. Their silver-black fur shimmered beneath the pale moonlight, and their golden eyes glowed with a strange intelligence that no ordinary wolf possessed. Elara lowered her head. She had heard countless stories about the royal guardians. Every pup in every pack knew them. They were the sacred protectors of the royal territory, older than kingdoms, older than legends themselves. No stranger had ever crossed their border and lived to tell the tale. She closed her eyes. So, this is how my story ends. Instead of fear, peace slowly filled her heart. At least she had reached the ancient gate. At least she had not given up. The largest wolf stepped closer. Its massive paw stopped only inches from her trembling hand. Elara waited for sharp claws, for fangs, for pain, but none came. Instead, the giant wolf gently lowered its head until its nose softly touched her injured shoulder. Warmth spread through her frozen body. She looked up in confusion. The wolf let out a low, peaceful sound that echoed through the valley. The other 3 wolves immediately bowed their heads as well. Elara blinked. Why? Her voice barely escaped her lips. I am only an Omega. The wolves remained perfectly still, as if her title meant absolutely nothing. Then something impossible happened. The ancient stone pillars surrounding the border began to glow. Silver symbols carved into the rocks lit up one after another. The frozen ground trembled beneath her. A deep rumble rolled through the mountains. For hundreds of years, the sacred gate had never opened. It slowly moved. Ancient stone scraped against ancient stone as the enormous gate separated down the middle. A brilliant silver light poured from the royal territory beyond. Elara stared with wide eyes. She had never imagined such beauty existed. Beyond the gate stretched forests unlike anything she had ever seen. Ancient trees reached toward the heavens. Crystal rivers reflected the moon like polished glass. Soft blue lights floated between the branches like tiny stars. Felt less like a kingdom, and more like another world. Far behind her, the border guards watched in complete horror. One young warrior dropped his spear. No! His voice shook. It cannot be. An older captain slowly fell to one knee. The royal gate. It opened. Another guard whispered nervously. For a crippled Omega. Several soldiers quickly lowered their heads. Nobody dared speak louder. Everyone understood what they were witnessing. History had just changed forever. One frightened messenger suddenly turned toward his horse. We have to inform the palace. Another shouted. And every neighboring pack. Within seconds, several riders disappeared into the storm. Their horses raced through the darkness carrying news that would soon shake the entire kingdom. The royal wolves remained focused only on Elara. She tried to push herself forward. Pain exploded through her damaged legs. She gasped. The effort was too much. Before she could collapse completely, the largest wolf gently lowered its body beside her. Its glowing eyes calmly met hers, almost as if it wanted her to climb onto its back. Elara quickly shook her head. I can't. I don't deserve. The wolf remained perfectly still, patient, waiting. A tear rolled down Elara's cheek. Nobody had ever waited for her before. Nobody had ever treated her gently. Fully. With shaking hands, she reached toward the wolf's thick silver fur. It was surprisingly warm. Another guardian carefully supported her from the side, allowing her broken body to rest across the leader's broad back. Not one wolf showed aggression. Not one growled. Instead they moved with incredible care, protecting every injured part of her body. Elara bit her lip. Thank you. The words were almost silent. Yet all 4 wolves stopped walking. Their ears lifted slightly. It was as if they had understood every word. Then the leader looked toward the glowing forest. The journey began. Step by step, the royal guardians escorted the forgotten Omega through the sacred gate. The moment they crossed the border, the enormous gate slowly closed behind them. Every guard remained frozen. One whispered, "Did we really see that?" Another answered, "No. I don't think anyone will believe us." Miles away, news spread faster than the winter wind. Inside village taverns, warriors stopped drinking. A crippled Omega entered the royal territory? Impossible. Inside noble houses, Lunas exchanged frightened looks. The guardians bowed. They bowed to no one. Inside distant packs, old elders silently remembered forgotten prophecies they had not spoken aloud for decades. Some looked hopeful, others looked terrified. Far above them all, standing inside the highest tower of the royal palace, a tall man dressed in black robes slowly opened his eyes. His sharp silver gaze settled upon a magical mirror floating before him. Within its glowing surface, he watched the 4 royal wolves escorting the unconscious Omega through the sacred forest. His expression remained calm, cold, impossible to read. Around him stood members of the royal council. One elderly noble gasped, "Your Majesty." She crossed the sacred gate. Another immediately spoke. "This cannot be allowed. She is an outsider. What if she carries disease?" A third stepped forward. "Or worse, a curse." The room filled with anxious whispers. Only one person remained silent. Alpha King Kael. His eyes never left the injured girl resting upon the guardian's back. The magical image shifted. As the wolves crossed a narrow bridge, a tiny injured bird fell from a nearby branch. Though unconscious, Elara's hand weakly reached outward, almost by instinct. Her fingers gently covered the frightened little bird to shield it from the cold wind. Even asleep, even broken, she still tried to protect another life. Kael's expression changed almost invisibly. One heartbeat, that was all. Then he quietly spoke. "Prepare the royal healers." The council stared. One noble protested. "Your Majesty, we know nothing about this woman." Kael finally looked away from the mirror. His calm voice filled the silent chamber. "I know one thing." Everyone waited. "Anyone the royal guardians choose enters this kingdom under my protection." Silence swallowed the throne room. No one dared argue another word. Far below the palace, the 4 royal wolves continued their journey through the glowing forest. The broken Omega still slept peacefully. She had no idea that the most powerful alpha in the world had just claimed responsibility for her life. The first rays of morning slipped through the towering silver trees, turning the forest into a sea of golden light. Birds sang softly above the ancient branches, and crystal streams reflected the colors of the rising sun. It was a place untouched by cruelty, where even the air felt peaceful. Upon the broad back of the largest royal guardian, the wounded Omega slowly stirred. Elara's eyelashes fluttered. A sharp ache spread through her body the moment she tried to move. She winced and opened her eyes. For several long seconds, she could not remember where she was. The last thing she remembered was crawling through the snow, believing death was only a few breaths away. Instead of icy winds, she now felt warmth. Instead of mocking voices, she heard birds singing. She blinked in confusion. The enormous wolf carrying her noticed she was awake. It turned its head slightly and released a gentle rumble, almost as if asking whether she was frightened. Elara slowly reached toward its thick silver fur. "You saved me." The guardian simply continued walking. Ahead, 3 other royal wolves cleared the path with silent grace. None of them treated her as a burden. For the first time in many years, Elara felt safe. The strange feeling almost made her cry. Hours later, the trees began to thin. A magnificent city appeared beyond the forest. Its towering white walls shimmered beneath the morning sun. Silver banners danced in the breeze. Tall watchtowers overlooked peaceful rivers and endless gardens. Everything looked beautiful beyond imagination. Elara had never seen a place so grand. As the royal guardians approached the main gate, dozens of royal soldiers immediately dropped to one knee. Their captain lowered his head. "The guardians have returned." No one dared ask questions. No one dared block their path. The massive gates slowly opened. Citizens stopped whatever they were doing. Merchants fell silent. Children pointed in amazement. People whispered to one another. "Who is she? Why are the guardians protecting an Omega? Has the moon goddess chosen someone?" The whispers followed Elara through every street. She lowered her eyes. Years of abuse had taught her that being noticed usually brought pain. The royal wolves ignored every stare. They walked proudly through the capital until they reached the heart of the palace. Towering marble pillars surrounded a magnificent courtyard. At its center stood an ancient fountain carved with wolves reaching toward the moon. Waiting there were royal healers dressed in flowing white robes. The oldest healer stepped forward. She looked at Elara's wounds and quietly sighed. So much suffering. Her gentle voice carried no judgment, only sadness. Carefully, the healers lifted Elara onto a soft bed. As they examined her injuries, silence slowly filled the courtyard. Bruises, scars, old broken bones that had healed badly. Fresh whip marks across her back. Deep cuts from frozen rocks. One young healer covered her mouth. Who could do this to one of their own? No one answered. The wounds spoke for themselves. Inside the highest chamber of the palace, Alpha King Kael stood before a large window overlooking the courtyard. He watched everything without saying a word. His trusted beta, Darius, stepped beside him. The healers say her injuries are severe. Kael remained silent. They also believe some of the damage is years old. Still no reply. Darius studied his king. You are unusually interested in this Omega. Kael's silver eyes never left the courtyard below. I am interested in one question. What question? The royal guardians have rejected princes. They have ignored kings. They have never bowed to anyone. His voice remained calm. So why did they choose her? Neither man had an answer. Below, Elara opened her eyes once again. A healer smiled kindly. You are safe. If the word sounded unfamiliar. She looked around nervously. I shouldn't be here. You need rest. No. She struggled to sit up despite the pain. I don't want to cause trouble. The healers gently stopped her. There is no trouble. But my pack. Her voice broke. They'll be angry. The elderly healer softly placed a hand over Elara's trembling fingers. My child. No one will harm you here. Those simple words shattered the last wall around Elara's heart. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. Not because of pain, but because someone had finally spoken to her with kindness. Far across the courtyard, hidden behind the palace window, Kael witnessed the moment. He had ruled countless battles. He had faced monsters without fear. Somehow, watching a broken Omega cry after hearing gentle words unsettled him more than any war ever had. Before he could speak, another guard hurried into the chamber. He knelt respectfully. Your Majesty, the Royal Council has assembled. They demand an immediate meeting. Kael turned away from the window. I expected as much. As he walked toward the throne room, his expression became cold once more. The king was returning. But deep inside, one question refused to leave his mind. Who was this quiet Omega? And why had destiny brought her to his kingdom? The royal council chamber was built to make even the bravest warriors feel small. Towering marble pillars reached toward a ceiling painted with the history of the werewolf kingdom. Moonlight poured through tall crystal windows, casting silver light across the polished floor. At the center of the chamber stood the ancient moon throne, where every Alpha King had ruled for centuries. King Kael entered without a word. Every noble immediately bowed. Your Majesty. His calm silver eyes swept across the room before he took his seat. Begin. An elderly duke stepped forward. Your Majesty, the stranger must be removed from the palace. Several nobles nodded. No outsider has ever entered the royal sanctuary. What if she is a spy? What if this is a trap? Kael remained silent. The room grew louder as more voices joined the argument. A general struck the floor with his spear. We cannot ignore tradition. Another noble added. The guardians may have made a mistake. The moment those words left his mouth, a deep growl echoed outside the chamber. Every voice stopped. One of the royal guardians stood beyond the open doors. Its glowing golden eyes looked directly at the noble who had questioned its judgment. The man's face turned pale. Without taking another step, the guardian turned and disappeared into the hallway. No attack, no threat, just one warning. The council understood. Even the royal guardians had heard their words. Kael finally spoke. The guardians do not make mistakes. His calm voice carried more authority than a shouted command. The discussion is over. Most of the nobles lowered their heads in silence. Only one person remained standing. Lady Seraphine, the kingdom's most admired noblewoman. Beautiful, elegant, ambitious. 4 years, everyone believed she would become the future queen. She offered a graceful smile. Your Majesty, no one questions your wisdom. She slowly walked toward the throne. But compassion must never blind a king. The kingdom is watching. If the people believe any stranger can enter the palace, our authority will weaken. Kael studied her quietly. And what would you have me do? She answered without hesitation. Send her away before she becomes a symbol. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Kael stood. His tall figure cast a long shadow across the floor. If the kingdom fears a wounded Omega, then perhaps the kingdom has forgotten what true strength is. No one dared reply. Without another word, Kael walked out of the chamber. Far across the palace, Elara sat beside a large window in the royal healing room. Fresh bandages covered her wounds. Although the pain remained, warm sunlight touched her face for the first time in many days. A small white bird landed on the windowsill. It chirped softly before hopping closer. Elara smiled. You came back. The tiny bird tilted its head. She gently offered a few crumbs of bread saved from her breakfast. You must be hungry. The bird happily pecked at the crumbs. One of the young healers watched from the doorway. You have barely eaten. Elara lowered her eyes. I've gone hungry before. But small creatures don't understand why food disappears. The healer felt her heart tighten. Even after everything she had suffered, she still thought of others first. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. A palace servant rushed inside. My lady. The royal gardens. What happened? A young wolf cub climbed onto the old moon fountain. He can't get down. The guards are afraid he'll fall. Without thinking, Elara stood. Pain shot through her injured legs. She nearly collapsed. The healer caught her arm. You cannot walk that far. But the child. He'll be frightened. Ignoring the warning, Elara slowly made her way toward the gardens. Every step hurt. Oh. She kept moving. By the time she arrived, dozens of servants had gathered below the ancient fountain. A frightened little cub clung to a broken stone statue high above the ground. He was crying. I don't want to fall. Several guards looked helpless. One whispered, if we climb after him, the statue may collapse. Elara stepped forward. May I try? The captain frowned. It is dangerous. She smiled gently. So is leaving him there. Using a nearby stone bench for support, she slowly climbed onto the fountain. Each movement sent pain through her injured body. The little cub looked down. His tears continued to fall. I'm scared. Elara smiled softly. So am I. The child blinked. You are. She nodded. But sometimes. Being brave simply means taking one more step even when you're afraid. The little cub slowly reached toward her. So will you stay with me? Elara held out both hands. I won't leave you. The frightened child gathered his courage. Carefully, he stepped toward her. The crowd below held its breath. One wrong move could send them both crashing to the ground. Hidden beneath the shadow of a nearby balcony, King Kael watched the entire scene in silence. For the first time in many years, he saw courage that did not come from strength, came from kindness. And without realizing it, the cold king found himself taking one step closer to the woman who feared for others more than she feared for herself. The celebration in the royal gardens lasted only a few moments. Servants praised the frightened cub for his courage as his grateful parents embraced him with tears in their eyes. One by one, the crowd began to leave, but their conversations followed Elara through every path in the palace. That is the Omega the royal guardians brought. She saved the little one. She can barely walk, yet she climbed the fountain. Elara lowered her head. She had never been comfortable with attention. She quietly turned to leave before anyone could thank her. A sudden wave of pain shot through her injured legs. She lost her balance. Before she could fall, a strong hand caught her arm. The touch was firm but careful. She slowly looked up. Standing before her was the man every wolf in the kingdom feared. Alpha King Kael. His silver eyes remained calm as he helped her stand. "You should not be walking." His voice was deep and steady. Elara quickly stepped back and bowed her head. "I am sorry, Your Majesty." Kael looked at her for a long moment. "You apologized." "Yes. For helping a child." Elara hesitated. "I caused trouble. The healers asked me to rest. I disobeyed." Kael's expression did not change. "The child is alive because you ignored your own pain. You did not cause trouble. You prevented tragedy." Those simple words caught Elara completely by surprise. No Alpha had ever thanked her before. She quietly whispered, "I only did what anyone should do." Kael answered without hesitation. "No. Not everyone would." Silence settled between them. The wind gently carried flower petals across the gardens. For the first time, Elara dared to meet his eyes. She expected pride. She expected arrogance. Instead, she found quiet sadness hidden beneath the calm face of a king. Before either of them could speak again, hurried footsteps echoed through the gardens. A palace guard dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty, the royal council requests your presence immediately." Kael nodded. "I will come." Before leaving, he looked back at Elara. "Return to the healing wing. That is not a request." His voice remained calm, yet impossible to refuse. Elara gave a small smile. "Yes, Your Majesty." As Kael disappeared into the palace, another pair of eyes watched from the shadows. Lady Seraphine. Her elegant smile slowly faded. She had seen the entire conversation. He thanked her. Her fingers tightened around the silk fan in her hand. "He has never thanked me." Jealousy burned behind her graceful expression. For years she had believed becoming queen was only a matter of time. Now a wounded Omega threatened everything. She quietly called one of her trusted servants. "Watch her. I want to know every place she goes. And every person who speaks to her." The servant bowed. "At once, my lady." Inside the royal council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Maps covered the large stone table. Nobles argued loudly while military commanders exchanged worried looks. The moment Kael entered, silence filled the room. An elderly minister stepped forward. "Your Majesty, messengers have returned from the Shadow Ridge Pack." Kael folded his hands behind his back. "What did they report?" The minister lowered his eyes. "The pack claims the Omega was exiled after stealing sacred medicine. They insist she is dangerous." Another noble quickly added. "They demand that she be returned immediately." The room waited for Kael's answer. Instead of speaking, he asked a single question. "Did they provide proof?" The nobles exchanged uncertain looks. "No, Your Majesty. They only sent accusations." Kael slowly walked toward the window. "Then accusations are all they possess. They will not have her." His words ended the discussion. No one dared argue. Far away in the healing wing, Elara sat quietly beside the window once again. She gently stitched a torn blanket left behind by one of the young wolf pups. An elderly healer smiled. "You should be resting." Elara laughed softly. "My hands still work. If I can help someone, I feel stronger." The healer shook her head with admiration. You have endured so much. Why do you still choose kindness? Elara paused. She looked toward the evening sky. When I was little, my mother used to tell me something. If pain teaches us to hurt others, then pain has already won. I don't want pain to win. The healer felt tears gathering in her eyes. Outside the room, Kael had arrived quietly after finishing the council meeting. He had intended only to ask about her recovery. Instead, he heard every word. For a moment, the Alpha King remained completely still. He had defeated armies. He had protected the kingdom for years. Yet the broken Omega had spoken a truth that none of his greatest warriors had ever understood. Before he could step inside, another guard rushed toward him. Your Majesty, there is urgent news. Kael turned immediately. What happened? The guard struggled to catch his breath. Our scouts captured one of Lady Seraphine's servants. He was caught searching the Omega's room. Kael's silver eyes hardened. What was he looking for? The guard swallowed nervously. We do not know. But he was carrying a pouch filled with stolen royal herbs. For the first time that evening, anger flickered across the Alpha King's face. Someone was trying to frame Elara once again. He looked toward the healing wing where she sat completely unaware of the danger growing around her. Then he gave a quiet order. Double the palace guards around her room. No one enters without my permission. The guard bowed deeply. At once, Your Majesty. High above the palace, storm clouds gathered over the kingdom once again. And hidden somewhere within the castle walls, an unseen enemy smiled, believing the next trap would finally destroy the broken Omega's chance at a new life. Night settled over the royal palace. Silver moonlight spilled across the stone walls, while torches flickered along the quiet hallways. Most of the palace had fallen asleep, but not everyone welcomed the peace of the night. Hidden beneath a dark cloak, Lady Seraphine walked through the eastern corridor. Her footsteps were slow, careful. No one noticed the palace maid following several steps behind her. Is everything ready? Seraphine asked quietly. The maid lowered her head. Yes, my lady. The stolen royal herbs have been placed where you ordered. And the servant who was caught. He believes he was working for another noble. A cold smile appeared on Seraphine's face. Good. By tomorrow morning, everyone will believe the crippled Omega is stealing from the palace. She turned toward the moonlit window. No matter how kind she appears, I will make this kingdom fear her. Far away, Elara slept peacefully for the first time in many years. The nightmares that usually haunted her had finally faded. But only for a moment. A sudden knock echoed outside her chamber. One of the royal healers hurried inside. Elara! She slowly opened her eyes. What happened? The Alpha King wishes to see you. Her heart skipped a beat. The king. The healer smiled gently. Do not be afraid. He only wishes to speak with you. A few minutes later, Elara carefully followed the healer through the palace. Her legs still hurt, but each day she walked a little farther than before. The corridors seemed endless. Paintings of ancient Alpha Kings covered the walls. Moonlight reflected across polished marble floors. Everything reminded her that she did not belong here. What if I say something wrong? She whispered. The healer looked at her kindly. You speak with honesty. That is enough. They stopped before a pair of enormous silver doors. Two royal guards stepped aside. The king is waiting. Elara took a deep breath and entered. The royal library was silent. Thousands of ancient books reached toward the ceiling. A warm fire burned beside a large window overlooking the kingdom. Alpha King Kael stood with his back to the room. Without turning around, he spoke. How are your injuries? Elara bowed her head. They are healing, Your Majesty. And your heart? She looked surprised. No one had ever asked her that question. After a long silence, she answered honestly. I don't know. Kael slowly turned toward her. His silver eyes studied her carefully. You have every reason to hate your former pack. She looked down at the floor. I try not to. Why? Because hatred grows. If I carry it, it will become part of me. The room fell silent. Kael had questioned countless warriors. Most answered with pride. Others answered with anger. But this quiet Omega answered with mercy. He walked toward a nearby table where 2 cups of warm herbal tea rested. He offered one to her. Elara hesitated. This is for me. Kael nodded once. You need warmth. With trembling hand she accepted the cup. No alpha had ever served her anything. The simple act felt almost impossible. As they stood beside the fire, neither spoke for several moments. The silence felt peaceful rather than uncomfortable. Finally Kael asked, Why did you risk your life for the cub in the garden? Elara smiled faintly. Because he was afraid. So were you. Yes. But children should never face fear alone. Kael quietly repeated her words. Children should never face fear alone. Something about that sentence stayed with him. For years he had protected an entire kingdom. Yet he wondered how many frightened children had still felt alone. Before he could ask another question, loud footsteps echoed outside. The library doors burst open. Captain Darius entered, breathing heavily. Your Majesty. Kael immediately sensed the urgency. What is it? The palace guards have searched the eastern storage hall. And they found another pouch of stolen royal herbs. Elara's face turned pale. Darius continued. It was hidden inside a blanket. The blanket belongs to the healing chamber. The room became silent. Elara slowly lowered the cup in her hands. I have never even entered the storage hall. I know, Kael replied calmly. She looked at him in surprise. You believe me? Kael answered without hesitation. I do. Those 2 words were stronger than any promise. For the first time since arriving at the palace, Elara felt someone truly trusted her. But outside the library, hidden behind the half-open door, Lady Seraphine listened to every word. Her beautiful face hardened with anger. The king believes her. She quietly clenched her fists. If lies cannot destroy the Omega, then I will create a disaster no one can ignore. She disappeared into the darkness before anyone noticed her. Above the palace, black clouds slowly covered the moon. A cold wind swept across the kingdom once again. Somewhere in the castle, a new trap had already begun. And this time, an innocent child would become its target. Morning arrived beneath a gray sky. The palace was unusually quiet, yet an uneasy feeling drifted through every hallway. Servants whispered to one another. Guards stood at every entrance with their hands resting on the hilts of their swords. Everyone had heard the rumors. Someone inside the palace was trying to frame the wounded Omega. Elara noticed the worried faces as she slowly walked through the healing wing. She stopped beside one of the young healers. Has something happened? The healer forced a smile. Nothing you need to worry about. But Elara could see fear hiding behind those gentle eyes. She knew that smile. She had worn it herself for years. Before she could ask another question, a cheerful voice echoed down the hallway. Miss Elara. A tiny wolf pup came running toward her. It was Rowan, the little cub she had rescued from the fountain the day before. He threw his small arms around her carefully. I wanted to thank you. Elara smiled warmly. You should not run so fast. He grinned. I wanted to see if you were feeling better. She gently ruffled his hair. I am getting stronger every day. The little cub reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden wolf he had carved himself. It isn't perfect, but I made it for you. Elara accepted the tiny gift with both hands as though it were priceless. It is beautiful. No one has ever made me a gift before. The child's eyes widened. Really? She nodded softly. Then this one is special. Watching from the end of the hallway, several servants exchanged emotional smiles. Even the palace guards looked away to hide their feelings. Far above them, Alpha King Kael stood on a stone balcony overlooking the courtyard. He had witnessed the entire exchange. Darius stepped beside him. The people are beginning to admire her. Kael remained silent. They see her kindness. Darius hesitated before asking. And Lady Seraphine. Kael's silver eyes grew colder. She is growing impatient. As if summoned by his words, Seraphine entered the courtyard below. She wore an elegant silver gown, smiling gracefully as nobles greeted her. No one could see the anger hidden beneath her perfect appearance. She walked directly toward Elara. "My dear, I heard you are recovering well." Elara bowed respectfully. "Thank you." Seraphine looked at the carved wooden wolf in Elara's hands. "How touching. So many people seem fascinated by you." Her voice remained sweet, but every word carried hidden poison. "I only hope you remember your place." Before Elara could answer, Rowan stepped in front of her. "Don't be mean." The courtyard fell silent. Seraphine looked down at the little cub. "And who taught you to interrupt your elders?" Rowan lifted his chin. "Miss Elara says kindness is more important than pride." For one brief moment, Seraphine's smile disappeared. The servants noticed. So did Kael. Seraphine quickly laughed. "What an adorable child." She gently touched Rowan's shoulder before walking away. The moment she disappeared behind the palace columns, her expression turned ice cold. She called one of her most loyal followers. "The Nursery." The servant bowed. "My lady. Make sure every guard is called away for a few minutes this afternoon." The servant looked confused. "And the children? They will be alone." Seraphine's eyes remained emotionless. "Exactly." Hours later, the palace nursery echoed with laughter. Dozens of young wolf pups played with carved toys while their caretakers cleaned the rooms. Elara had come only to return Rowan's wooden wolf after repairing one of its broken legs. The children immediately surrounded her. "Miss Elara, will you tell us a story?" She laughed softly. "Only one." The children gathered around as she sat beside the fireplace. There was once a little wolf who believed he was too small to matter. The pups listened with shining eyes. Outside the nursery windows, a shadow slipped silently across the garden. Moments later, a faint smell drifted into the room. "Mo." One caretaker frowned. "Do you smell that?" Another looked toward the hallway. Then someone screamed, "Fire!" Within seconds, thick black smoke rolled beneath the nursery doors. Children began crying. Panic spread through the room. Caretakers rushed toward the exit, but flames burst across the hallway, blocking their escape. One woman fell to her knees. "We're trapped." The youngest pups clung to Elara in terror. Rowan buried his face against her shoulder. "I'm scared." Elara looked at the growing fire, then at the frightened children. Fear tightened her chest. But another memory filled her heart. Children should never face fear alone. She slowly stood despite the pain in her legs. Her voice remained calm. "Listen to me. No one is leaving anyone behind." The children looked up at her through their tears. She forced herself to smile. "I won't let him face this alone." She wrapped a wet blanket around Rowan's shoulders. Then she looked toward the burning hallway. The flames climbed higher. Smoke swallowed the ceiling. Every second mattered. And somewhere beyond the fire, someone watched with a satisfied smile, believing the trap had finally worked. Smoke swallowed the palace corridor. Dark clouds rolled across the ceiling as frightened voices echoed through the nursery. The warm room that had been filled with children's laughter only moments before was now covered in fear. Little wolves cried as flames crept beneath the wooden doors. Some of the youngest pups hid beneath tables. Others clung to one another, too terrified to move. Elara forced herself to stay calm. Her injured legs trembled beneath her weight, but she refused to let the children see her fear. She knelt beside the smallest pup, A little girl no older than 5. The child buried her face against Elara's shoulder. Are we going to die? Elara gently brushed the tears from the little girl's cheeks. No. Her voice was soft but steady. As long as I am here. You will never face this alone. The child nodded, believing every word. Elara looked around the smoke-filled room. The main door was blocked by fire. The windows were too high for the smallest children. Every heartbeat mattered. She noticed a large bookshelf standing against the far wall. Beyond it was an old service door almost hidden by years of dust. One of the elderly caretakers suddenly remembered. That passage leads to the palace gardens. But no one has opened it in years. Elara's eyes filled with hope. Help me move the shelf. The women hesitated. It is too heavy. Then we move it together. Ignoring the burning pain in her legs, Elara placed both hands against the wood. The caretakers joined her. The children pushed with all the strength their tiny bodies could give. Slowly, very slowly, the heavy shelf began to move. A narrow stone doorway appeared behind it. Fresh air rushed inside. Several children smiled through their tears. We found a way. But before anyone could celebrate, a loud crack echoed overhead. A burning beam crashed onto the floor. Flames spread across the room. The little girl screamed. Without thinking, Elara threw herself forward. She wrapped the frightened child in her arms as sparks rained around them. The burning wood landed only inches away. The impact sent sharp pain through Elara's shoulder. She winced but never loosened her hold. You are safe. The little girl cried against her chest. Outside the nursery, palace guards finally reached the burning hallway. Captain Darius shouted orders. Bring water. Break the walls if you must. We need another entrance. The guards rushed forward. But the flames were growing stronger by the second. Far above, Alpha King Kael stood in the council chamber discussing border security when the smell of smoke reached the open windows. His expression changed instantly. A royal guard burst through the doors. Your Majesty, the nursery is on fire. Kael did not wait for another word. His chair crashed backward as he ran from the chamber. The nobles stared in shock. No one had ever seen the calm Alpha King move with such urgency. His footsteps thundered through the palace. Servants jumped aside. Guards struggled to keep pace with him. Only one thought filled his mind. Elara. When Kael reached the nursery corridor, thick smoke covered everything. The heat struck like a wave. Captain Darius stepped in front of him. The roof may collapse. Kael looked through the flames. Children were still trapped inside. Without hesitation, he shifted into his massive black wolf. His silver eyes glowed like moonlight. A powerful roar shook the palace. The guards immediately stepped back. Using his immense strength, Kael smashed through the burning doorway. Stone shattered beneath his paws. Inside the nursery, Elara was leading the last group of children toward the hidden passage. She coughed as smoke filled her lungs. One frightened cub suddenly cried out, "My brother!" He is still inside. The room fell silent. Everyone froze. The little boy had disappeared. Elara looked toward the deepest corner of the nursery. Through the smoke she saw a tiny figure trapped beneath a fallen wooden beam. The child was too frightened to move. The caretakers grabbed Elara's arm. You can't go back. The roof is falling. She looked at the children already safe inside the tunnel. Then she looked at the trapped boy. Her answer came without hesitation. I won't leave him. Before anyone could stop her, she turned and disappeared into the flames. Outside, Kael caught sight of her through the smoke. His heart tightened. For the first time in years, the fearless Alpha King felt genuine fear. He charged deeper into the burning room. You will not touch him. His powerful voice echoed through the collapsing nursery. At that exact moment, a burning beam crashed between them. Fire separated the Alpha King from the brave Omega. For one terrifying heartbeat, neither of them could see the other. And hidden among the frightened crowd outside the nursery, a cloaked figure quietly smiled. The trap was unfolding exactly as planned. The nursery fell silent after the flames were finally extinguished. Smoke drifted through the shattered windows, and the smell of burned wood filled the air. Healers rushed from child to child, checking every frightened pup. Some cried in their parents' arms. Others simply stared at the blackened walls, too shocked to speak. At the center of the room sat Elara. Her hands were wrapped in fresh bandages. Ash covered her face. A long cut marked her shoulder where the burning beam had grazed her while she shielded the last trapped cub. Despite her injuries, she looked only at the children. "Is everyone safe?" she whispered. An elderly healer smiled through tears. "They are alive because of you." Before Elara could answer, the heavy doors of the nursery opened. Alpha King Kael entered. His black cloak was stained with soot, evidence that he had entered the fire himself. The room immediately became silent. Every guard bowed. Every servant stepped aside. Kael ignored them all. His eyes searched only for one person. When he saw Elara sitting against the wall, relief crossed his face for only a heartbeat before his calm expression returned. He walked toward her. "You are injured." Elara lowered her eyes. "It is only a few burns. The children. They are safe." Kael looked around the room. Every rescued child had survived. The smallest cub, whom Elara had carried through the flames, suddenly ran toward her and hugged her tightly. "You came back for me. I knew you would." Several guards quietly looked away, unable to hide their emotions. Kael watched the scene in silence. He had seen warriors earn medals. He had seen generals celebrated after victories. But he had never seen children trust someone as completely as they trusted this quiet Omega. Then hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. Captain Darius entered with several palace investigators. His face was grim. "Your Majesty, we have discovered something." "What is it?" Kael asked. Darius held up a small silver pendant. It was found near the place where the fire started. The room grew quiet. The pendant carried the symbol of the royal healing wing. One of the nobles who had gathered outside immediately pointed toward Elara. "She came from the healing wing." Another whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Perhaps she started the fire." The whispers spread through the crowd. "I heard she arrived only days ago. Nothing like this happened before. Maybe she brought bad fortune." Elara slowly stood despite the pain in her legs. "I did not start the fire." Her voice was calm. "I would never harm a child." Some believed her. Others remained silent. Fear made people doubt what they had witnessed only moments earlier. From the edge of the crowd, Lady Seraphine watched with hidden satisfaction. Her trap was working. She stepped forward with perfect grace. "Your Majesty," she said gently, "no one wishes to accuse an innocent woman. But the kingdom deserves answers." She looked toward Elara with carefully disguised sympathy. "If she truly is innocent, an investigation will clear her name." Several nobles nodded. "It is only fair. It protects everyone." Elara remained silent. She knew how quickly truth could disappear when powerful people controlled the story. Kael looked from the frightened children to the burned nursery, then to the frightened faces of his nobles. Finally, his gaze settled on Elara. He saw no fear for herself, only worry that the children might blame themselves. He took one step forward. "No judgment will be made today." His deep voice echoed through the ruined room. "I will not condemn anyone on rumors." One noble protested. "But Your Majesty."